Revelation. A Megayana after the death of Hikaru Kirakatsu. After Hikaru's death, Merlin, spent the first part of my time fulfilling his wishes as his successor in Endradus. I left behind House Cryptic to oversee things justly alongside the other two demon houses, House Abyss and House Catastrophe. After leaving Endradus, I spent time lamenting my friend and my fate. I wandered throughout Emphalis, just existing and waiting for the second purpose Hikaru entrusted me with before his death. I never saw my friends or my love again. About 30 years after Hikaru's death, I heard whispers that Lila had flown south past Zephyr to where the mythological Isle of the Incarnations exists and proceeded into the void. Some millennia after that, I heard tales of Sun Ren's last exploits in the Second Angel-Demon War, and how she was betrayed by a group of elves looking to break away from the main faction. In anger, I hunted down each member of this group and slaughtered them all. However, as I was leaving their headquarters on the eastern coast of Zephyr, I noticed a badly injured angel they had been keeping prisoner. "What is your name?" I asked the angel, who had been chained to the outside wall of their headquarters. I had not noticed him initially as I had snuck in through an underground smuggling tunnel and had not scanned the area for the energy signatures. I was just there to kill every elf in that splinter sect. The angel did not reply and just hung there limply, though I could not tell if it was fatigue or defiance. From the energy pouring out of him, I could tell he was still alive, albeit barely. I released him from his chains against what I can only assume was my better judgment. He collapsed pitifully upon the ground, almost too light to make a sound upon impact. I had never in all my years seen an angel so malnourished and so stripped of its brilliance, almost as if he had been born not into light, but unto darkness. "I'm going to read your memories. I don't think it will hurt you, but I'm unsure. I cannot tell without touching your mind whether it is too injured to withstand. However, if I should find that it is, I will relinquish and put you out of your misery." I stepped forward and placed my hand upon the angel, who recoiled instinctively in fear from the touch. What had been done to this poor creature which lay before me? The angel's mind, I discovered, was not damaged beyond repair, merely new and not entirely formed. His memories, the fragments of those he had, if they could be called that, consisted of two angels being forced to conceive a full-grown angel for the elvish sect he had just slain. The elves had then slain the angels and imprisoned the newborn so they could raise him to fight against their enemies. It had been a brutal 2 days of existence for the newborn, mainly consisting of beatings and showing him paintings of their enemies' armor and insignias. Tears streamed down my eyes as I finished flipping through the newborn's memories, ending with him hearing the slaughter of his captors and then me approaching and asking his name, a word which held no meaning to him. I looked over this poor soul before me and, healing what I could of his mind and body, named him Mordred. I took Mordred under my wing from that day forward, traveling north up the coastline until we came to the small port town of Palm Bay. It had been several months since I found Mordred, and his education had been basic initially. I taught him the elements, the gods and goddesses, the mortal races, and the beasts that roamed this world. I told him of the incarnations and the history of Emphalis as I knew it then. Mordred took all these things in with a sense of wonder and awe, driven by a curiosity I believed had replaced the darkness he had been born into. I thought in Mordred I had found a kindred spirit, a son who, like me, was abandoned in the world and searching for his purpose until his destiny arrived. I would realize later that what I had found in Mordred was not a kindred spirit, filled with wonder and awe, but rather an avenger robbed of his vengeance. Mordred was filled with wonder and awe, not at what he was learning, but at how he could use what he was learning. My years with Mordred passed gently, like a cool autumn day. Over the next 3 millennia, I taught Mordred everything I knew and had come up with until that point, including the mastery of illusions, something that I will never teach again because of Mordred. Mordred excelled at, and in everything I taught him, mastering the basics of illusions within the first 500 years and the more advanced techniques within the next 1,000 years. After this, he learned how to refine his use of energy and techniques until, one day, Mordred decided it was time for him to find his way in the world on his own. And so, after 1,000 years of being master and apprentice, I once again became a Merlin awaiting purpose, and he became a man making his purpose. 3 Megaana later. After the end of the Second Angel-Demon War, 2 of the major factions of elves who had split off from Zephyr left their homeland and sailed east across the sea to the then unpopulated continent that existed due east. After the 2 groups had landed in this new land, they split into 2 tribes and began to forsake a lot of their elvish customs and traditions. Over time, these differences between them and the elves grew to become not just cultural but genetic. The first faction stopped practicing magic as much and lost a lot of their energy over time. Their ears became rounded, and they began to build cities upon the ground, unlike in the forest and up in the trees as the elves had previously done. The second faction did not abandon magic, but became more in tune with animals and their animalistic side than plants and trees. This group would develop animal-like features, such as furred ears atop their heads, tails, fangs, and even scales. Their energy levels remained unchanged, though their magic became more like untamed nature. The gods and goddesses convened and decided to call the first new race humans and the second new race demi-humans. Most of the humans settled in the territory south of the Great River, Equus, which flows east to west through this land. They called this new land Callena, and the demi-humans who settled north of Equus called their home Keimos. After these 2 new countries were created, tensions rose throughout Emphalis. Jarek Kirakatsu, the current king of Andradis and supreme king of Emphalis, tried to ease things as best they could, sending multiple diplomats over the decades to initiate peace talks between the elves, humans, and demi-humans. Most of the angels were mad at how the humans and demi-humans had refused to help in the Second Angel-Demon War, and so would not support the humans and demi-humans in any meaningful way. During this tumultuous period, I first began hearing whispers about the path Mordred had taken when he left me. At first, it was just questionable things, assassinations I would listen to that had weird consequences, nothing major. Then, I began to hear tales of a master illusionist and assassin who was recruiting members for a group that would act as a dark hand in Emphalis. This shadow government would remove any entity in their way. Still, I was unsure of Mordred's involvement until I heard that someone had snuck into the palace of Callena, located in the city of Oceania overlooking Equus and the sea, and assassinated the then Queen of Callena. Mordred's guild, the Dark Hand, as they called themselves, then began to spread the word that the elves in Zephyr had ordered the hit. Fearing they would be next, the nation of Keimos joined Callena in a preemptive strike against Zephyr, a blockade of the port of Palm Bay. At this time, I had returned to the Cataclysm, gathering the information I had via various illusions of myself I had stationed around Emphalis in multiple different societal positions. When I heard that Mordred had a part in the assassination of a prominent world leader, I was more than incensed. Mordred had taken my teachings, which were to protect himself and others, and used them to create what had the potential to be a worldwide conflict. I resolved that I would not send an illusion to deal with him, but instead, I would face my apprentice and either correct the error of his ways or send him into the void. I readied myself for the long journey to where I had heard Mordred's guild was headquartered, the small town of Camlin, far south of Oceania in Callena. Knowing all that I had taught Mordred, I knew that it might be decades or even centuries before I picked up his trail, let alone confronted him. But I had a starting point and knew what to look for. Arthur of Callena. I arrived in Callena a month after I had left the Cataclysm, having taken my time traveling through Andradis, Keimos, and Zephyr, trying to pick up any information I could about Mordred or the Dark Hand. Every day, I heard the same whispers and rumors about an illusionist assassin and his trained guild who took on shadow jobs, as they called them, jobs involving murder, thievery, burglary, and blackmail. I took up residence in an inn in Oceania, near the palace, in case another attempt was made on the new queen's life. I set my illusions all about Callena, searching for and killing any members of the Dark Hand they encountered. Eliminating the Dark Hand took the better part of a century, causing me to change my identity and appearance, not to mention my base of operations multiple times. Never once did I encounter Mordred, and never once did I hear of him being around, but I knew he was still in the shadow of the world somewhere. Suddenly, about a century and a half after I had eliminated the Dark Hand, an assassin broke into Zephyr's grove of elders and assassinated the king of Zephyr during his talks with the rulers of Keimos and Callena, causing the start of the First Elvish-Human War. Mordred had somehow overcome the magical protection I placed on the grove of elders and assassinated the king. From here, he used his cunning and knowledge to create a human illusion of himself as an advisor to the Queen of Callena. And it was at the Battle of Oceania in the First Elvish-Human War that Mordred treacherously whispered into the Queen's ear to drown all the soldiers fighting in the battle on both sides, widening the great river Equus until it turned the land of Keimos into an island, drowning millions if not billions of people. Enraged more than I had ever been and driven to the bottomless pit of despair by my students' manipulation of others via my teachings, I abandoned my current method of searching for Mordred. I approached his illusion, Arthur, advisor to the Queen of Callena, in his private chambers within the palace without disguise or illusion. "Hello, Mordred," I said casually as I spread my pink wings across the room's width, blocking all view of anything behind me. The light of my radiance lit the darkened room in a soft pink glow, casting just enough light for Arthur and me to make each other out. He lay still in the bed, eyes narrowed at me, a look of disgust upon his face. "Master Merlin, coward extraordinaire," Arthur said, spitting onto the floor beside him as if saying my name had left a bad taste in his mouth, the nerve of this illusion, showing disdain towards a living thing. I could barely contain my anger. The only thing withholding me from releasing my fury was that it would harm only those in the palace. This illusion could feel no pain, and Mordred could feel no pain through it. I reached out with energy and grabbed Arthur's, backtracking his energy signature to all of Mordred's illusions until I finally had his location. "I'm coming for you now, Mordred," I said, causing Arthur the illusion to dissipate by absorbing the energy contained within him. It would help me as a reference to Mordred's energy signature in case he tried to run. It would take too much work and time for Mordred to coordinate all his illusions moving around the world simultaneously. Not even I could do that. Before I left the palace in Oceania, I cast a spell over it so illusions dissipate when they hit the castle gates, deterring others from following this path or Mordred should he escape me again. Then I turned northwest towards Zephyr and my showdown with Mordred, anxious about how this battle would proceed and how I would defeat my only beloved apprentice. Mordred and Merlin. Mordred had still attempted to throw me off his trail, splitting his energy into 4 identical signatures and spreading them across Emphalis, which might have worked against someone who could not do the same thing and with better results. Still, it was the better part of a week before I had cornered Mordred in an old bunker previously used by the Dark Hand located deep in Endratus, near where its lands give way to those of the Nameless One and its undead horde. Mordred wore his worry upon his face, his eyes sunken and low, his usually shiny black hair as dull as his gray eyes. His clothes hung loosely around his form, more than likely due to the stress of being hunted by me. He retreated away from me as I approached him down the long brick corridor, taking a step back for every step I took forward. "Is this how you want to meet your end, Mordred? Are you cowering in fear of a man you once called a coward? Do you not wish to meet me with the same zeal that caused you to convince the Queen of Callena to drown those billions of people? Are you not the Dark Hand of Death, come to claim the lives of those who could promote change and yet don't? What better target for you than a primordial angel who sits and does nothing while waiting for a child who might never come?" I screamed my taunts down the hallway towards him, hoping to berate him into a desperate, all-out fight he could not win. "Do you think me a fool, my master?" asked Mordred as he stood up straight, the worried look and sunken appearance dropping away from him, an illusion made more realistic by his actions. I was impressed at his approach and reminded that he was not some cornered animal, but a cornered illusionist full of tricks and traps that could end me in the right conditions. I took a deep breath and reached out with my energy, trying to feel if there were any traps in the area. This, however, had been anticipated by Mordred. Pipes began to shoot out of the walls at various heights and intervals, sending roaring flames throughout the corridor. I attempted to surround myself with a barrier, but it failed to form, probably another trap instituted by Mordred. He had been very clever so far, or maybe I had underestimated him, I thought, as I instead countered the flames with waves of water magic. Smoke wafted through the corridor, obscuring my vision. I tried to reach out with my energy to sense my surroundings, but Mordred had flooded the entire corridor with energy. I could not use my energy sense to substitute my sight and would have to rely on more magic to clear the smoke. This presented me with a problem I had not encountered before in life. I had always been able to outsmart or overpower my opponents, but Mordred seemed to be accounting for both things and countering me head-on. For the first time, I was unsure if I would be victorious in this situation, and I regretted not sending an illusion in my place. Do you understand now, Master? You have done my job for me by delivering yourself to me. You will never have to worry about finding purpose, for your student has come to tell you your life is fulfilled, you who are as long-lived as a god, but inconsequential as a single molecule of oxygen. I will slay my master, and the dark hand will grip Emphalis. We will use your teachings to hold all power from the shadows and lead the world into a brighter future. I had created a monster hellbent on using my teachings to control the world. I had betrayed the memories of my king and my comrades by letting this monster live as long as it had. Initially, I had taken pity on it as it had reminded me so much of myself, but I could not have been more wrong or misguided. Energy began to well up within me, coursing to the surface in a way it had not in a very long time. The smoke in the corridor was blasted away as the energy condensed back into me instead of its typical vibrant pink, a darker, almost red color. I could feel the skeletal mask begin to form around my head, encasing me in a layer of armor and spreading down my body. The light from my wings dimmed, casting more shadows along the length of the corridor. I could feel a shiver run down Mordred's spine as I finished my partial demonic transformation. Mordred, I growled as I began to run towards him, my much heavier feet leaving cracks in the floor with every step. Traps began to spring to life around me, but I bull-rushed through them, my focus singularly on Mordred, who appeared to be readying a spell at the end of the hall. Walls of earth began to spring up between us, slowing my progress toward my traitorous apprentice. I smashed through them as quickly as possible, my heavily armored fists making short work of the hastily thrown together barriers. Mordred had never seen or even known about my transformations, so he had no idea how strong to make the walls. He was trying to find the exact level of energy he would need to keep me out for a moment, either to make an escape or to enact some final plan to kill me. I would not let him have his moment, as he had not allowed those he had assassinated peace. Wall after wall crumbled before me, more robust still, and yet I felt no closer to Mordred. Though I could not sense where exactly his energy was, I had the vague feeling that he was elongating the corridor using magic. It had never occurred to me before now how annoying it must be to fight someone like me. He used traps, tricks, and whatever else he could to avoid a confrontation. Mordred's style of battle, very much my own, was starting to drag on my patience, and the constant rhythm of smashing through wall after wall was beginning to numb my armored hands. I took a deep breath and focused an orb of dark energy on the palm of my hand, condensing it until it was no larger than a small pebble. The dense mass of energy floated in front of me momentarily before I flicked it as hard as possible toward where I figured Mordred must be. The orb smashed through wall after wall of earth with 100 times the destructive fury I had previously unleashed upon them. The bunker itself shook and began to crumble with the destructive force of the orb, bringing the roof and walls down around us. Instead of allowing Mordred to hide in the bunker and lure me into a battle of attrition, I would pull him into the open and engage him in an all-out battle, something I knew he had no hope of beating me in. I saw Mordred some 60 feet from me, shielding himself from the fallen rubble of the destroyed bunker. Dust swirled around us in the cold night air, the moon looking solemnly down on the scene below. Mordred was dirted and a little bruised from what I could see, but for the most part, he seemed uninjured so far. His gray eyes caught my green ones, and he spread his black feathered wings, sure that there was no other way out. They will sing of the day I overcame Merlin the Primordial. He yelled at me as he focused his energy on enhancing his physical form. Mordred knew there would be no matching my experience when it came to magic, but in hand-to-hand combat, he at least stood a chance, even with the power granted to me by my transformation, or so he thought. Sun Ren had spent thousands of years drilling me in hand-to-hand combat, teaching me to face my opponents instead of tricking or trapping them into submission. She had insisted that the other angels and I brush up on all forms of combat to serve Hikaru better. Sun Ren would see that no angel would be useless while serving the Supreme King, and her lessons would find their worth with me today. I parried his first 2 jabs away from my face, catching his cross with my right hand as I kneed him in the gut with my left knee. Mordred groaned and doubled over in pain, and I released my grip on him as fire shot forth from my mouth. Mordred had attempted the same attack, causing the blasts of flame to send us both flying backward a few feet. The searing heat caused me to close my eyes long enough for Mordred to land a few punches and kicks. The skeletal armor I was encased in began to crack under the force of his enhanced blows, causing my body to reverberate with each strike. I reared back my head and released another blast of flame twice the size of the first. Mordred rolled to his right to avoid the blast, but my speed allowed me to hit him mid-roll with a club fist to the side of the head. There was a loud whack as Mordred's brain rattled against his skull, momentarily dazing him. I followed up with an uppercut to the chin, allowing dark energy to tear itself through the flesh of Mordred's face. He screamed in agony, his face disfigured and cursed, made evident by the imperfection of purple skin between his eyes and chin. Leaving him no time to react, I grabbed Mordred around the waist and slammed him into the earth, shaking the ground with the impact. Mordred screamed again as his body bounced up from the force of the slam, brought into the ground again with a hammer fist from my interlaced hands. I stood victoriously over the broken body of my apprentice, taking in the scene as I returned to my natural form. Shards of bones broke off and fell to the ground around me, littering the former bunker with more evidence of the battle that had taken place. "Master," came the broken voice of Mordred from below me, the broken voice of an apprentice I had once viewed as a son. I finally understood what Hikaru had gone through when he faced and killed his 3 sons, and finally felt a glimpse of what he had in the moments before his downfall. "Mordred," I said as I kneeled beside him. Mordred's body was broken, but he was far from dead. Angels were among the most formidable beings in all Emphalis to kill, and Mordred would undoubtedly hold on to his life until nothing was left of it. Still, I was unsure if I could kill Mordred as brutally as Hikaru had done with his children. As I sat beside Mordred, a solution occurred to me. I had been practicing transforming energy into living creatures. Maybe it was possible to turn Mordred into something else. I turned to face Mordred, who was now smiling at me with a look of pure ecstasy. Deep in my thoughts, I had not noticed that Mordred had been gathering energy into himself for the entirety of the battle, similar to what destruction had done to Hikaru. Before I could react, Mordred's energy exploded outwards, blasting away my wings and rendering me without flight. I reached out towards the center of the energy with my own and, using my sheer willpower, began to transform it into the first creature that came to my mind, the demonic bunnies of Endradus, with their black fur and little red beady eyes. The energy relented my touch at first and then caved, wave after wave of dangerous blasts from Mordred, becoming wave after wave of bunnies as my spell took hold of him. Seeing that my spell would take care of Mordred, I decided to give him a parting gift and faked my death by making it appear as if the explosion had claimed my life and that the bunnies had been my way of making sure Mordred's explosion would claim no lives, but our own. I was satisfied that things were resolved, that I was victorious, and that people would believe Mordred had died with his master if he had told anyone that Merlin the Primordial was still alive. I transformed my appearance and began my journey back south toward the cataclysm, awaiting the child that might never come.